Welcome to EEC Art. Today we explore the gap between human rights official statements and the reality of human rights victims in Africa. Today's topic is, who is Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza? We try to explore the reality that faces human rights victims in Africa. Now, this story is about Rwanda. We understand that in the UK, somewhere last year, October 2023, the Supreme Court ruled against the Rwanda bill, declaring that Rwanda was not a safe country for migrants, UK migrants, to be shipped there for their cases to be tried. Subsequently, the then Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak, used his power of Parliamentary Supremacy to overturn the rulings of the court to finally pass this Rwanda bill into law. But as we understand, when the new Labour government came in, they also basically scrapped this new law. But this case here by Ms. Umuhoza gives an idea of the state of play of events in Rwanda. I think many will sort of admire the work that President Kagame has done in Rwanda since 1994, since the genocide in 1994, in keeping a good grip of that nation and developing the nation and bringing its people together. I am also an admirer of President Paul Kagame's work. He's one of the few people that one can single out on the African continent as leading his nation through prosperity and development. And so it is natural that he does have overwhelming power and support in that nation. However, we shouldn't overlook the problems and the challenges faced by certain individuals or political opponents and the kind of treatment that they receive in Rwanda as a nation. I personally stumbled across this case in my research on the African Court on Human and People's Rights. And I felt that for the details of this particular case, it is necessary for it to be made clear to the public so that whoever intends to support this lady could actually do so to free her from her somehow imprisonment in Rwanda. And when I say imprisonment, I don't necessarily mean that Victoria Ingabire Umuhoza is actually in prison as we speak. She has been in prison in the past, but currently, as at 2018, she had been released on a presidential pardon by President Kagame. However, she has been basically banned from traveling outside Rwanda, and therefore, since the year 2010, this lady has not seen her family, and this is the reason why I felt the need to highlight this case. This is public information. There is nothing new about it, but it's to highlight this particular case to see if we can actually mobilize financial support to engage some human rights lawyers to basically do what is necessary to plead with the president of this nation to allow Miss Victoria Ingabire Umuhoza to travel outside Rwanda to see her family, who are currently based in Holland, in the Netherlands. And so, without further ado, I will begin with this article. There was a case between this lady. So basically, just to give you a bit of a background, Rwanda has a sensitive political situation due to the genocide that occurred in 1994 between the Tutsis and the Hutsus. And so it appears that from the report, that official report that we have, this lady here somehow lived outside Rwanda after the 1994 genocide. It appears that she may be a Hutu, and she lived in Holland with her family. But in the year 2010, she returned to Rwanda to form a political party. I probably need to pick up this name. Let's pick up the name of her political party. If you bear with me a sec. Her political party we have here as I think it was a FRP or something of that sort. That was, she formed this political party in Rwanda, basically to engage in the democratic processes of elections in that country. Now, one should also make it clear that in view of the challenges that Rwanda faced based on the genocide, there was that need for political stability, and that is why probably President Paul Kagame has been elected for the fourth time in 2024, August 2024, into his position as president. However, this is in contravention with the Rwandan constitution. I think it's Article 110, which President Paul Kagame, it appears, was able to amend to allow him to extend his political life in the politics of Rwanda, where he has basically extended his office beyond the standard 2-term that is allowed by the Rwandan constitution. And so that political stability was necessary. And also in view of the challenges of the basically repairing and restoring relations between the Tutsis and the Hutsus, it was actually outlawed for anyone to make any distinction amongst the Rwandan people. But it seems that this lady may have fallen victim to this law of Rwanda, and therefore was imprisoned, for this situation. So basically, it appears that when she formed this political party in 2010 and was actually active, departed from Holland, left her family behind, and went into Rwanda to do this politics. On one such occasion, she actually appeared at the Genocide Memorial Center. I think it is probably based in Kigali, where she made a speech, and in the course of the speech may have touched on the nerves of the genocide in Rwanda. From my understanding, she made a statement that basically criticized the government for the fact that the memorial was built only for the Hutus only for the Tutsis. I have to get that clear. Only for the Tutsis, but not the Hutus. So obviously, she being a Hutu made some sort of lamentation about this. And this is when she was arrested and charged with acts of belittling the genocide, spreading genocide ideology, acts of terrorism, sectarianism, divisionism, and also undermining the authority of state. However, unlike some politicians, this lady followed the due process of law within Rwanda, so she was actually in prison for 8 years. When she actually made an appeal, she was actually imprisoned even further to 15 years. But her case actually ended up in the African Courts of Human and People's Rights. And in the course of that, some aspect of the judgment was ruled in her favor. But on the issues of freedom of speech and freedom of thought, basically Rwanda was, the ruling was in favor of Rwanda on the basis of the freedom of speech and freedom of opinion and association did have limitations, which she should have been very much aware of in view of Rwanda's special situation. And so when such ruling concluded, there was some sort of another hearing on reparations, which was actually done, and there was some sort of an amount ordered for Rwanda to pay her and also to free her in a way. However, it appears that in the course of the reparations hearing, Miss UMUHOZA actually confirmed that she had been pardoned by the president of Rwanda as of 2018 and had been released from prison, and all charges against her had been dropped. And so the reason why this video is exploring the gap between human rights official statements and the reality of victims is that the reparations order that was given by the African Courts of Human and People's Rights up until June 2024 had not been settled to this lady. But what is more devastating is the fact that in as much as she has been freed from prison, she is basically not allowed to participate in the in the political elections or electoral issues in her country, which potentially is an abuse of her civil and political rights. But more importantly, she has been restricted, basically not been allowed to travel out of Rwanda. And so the challenge or the problem that caused me to actually bring this case to the fore, to mobilize some support, to lobby for Rwanda to allow her to travel, is the fact that Miss UMUHOZA has not seen her family since the year 2010. And so that is 14 years since that time. And so the idea is that we need to mobilize support. And I will encourage any woman, any mother, any sister to basically put their support behind this lady. I will have some banking details in the description section, where you can actually go there and make financial support, and you put your reference as UMUHOZA. And so whatever amounts are gathered, we are going to engage a human rights lawyer to actually find a way to help this lady, to allow her to travel to see her family, because I think it is a right for any person, especially if they has been pardoned and all charges have been dropped, they have to be given the right to see their family. And so the reason how or why I got to know about this case at the end of my research, when I'd almost basically closed whatever I was writing, I finally discovered this article which had been written by Victoria INGABIRE UMUHOZA as at the 1st of June 2024, and this is what caused me to actually basically inspired me to make this video to support her cause. So I am going to read through this article, which is written by herself and is in the Al Jazeera newspaper as at the 1st of June 2024. So if the contents of it are substantiated, then I think that indeed she deserves that right to be able to travel to see her family. And anybody that have any way of supporting with her appeal to the president of Rwanda, then surely they can also do so. And so the article begins that on this year's Global Day of Parents, I still long to be with my children. In a country that claims to be a champion of women and family, I remain separated from my children due to my political activism. And so, as you can see, it's written by Miss Umuhoza, who regards herself as a Rwandan political figure. And as you can see, that is her family on their last day of departure in 2010. Miss Umuhoza is the lady, basically, from looking from the right, she is the second lady. And she has not seen her family of 4 since the year 2010. My country, Rwanda, has long enjoyed a reputation as a nation committed to advancing women's rights and protecting families. This commitment, however, is deeply selective. Critics of the government, like myself, are routinely deprived of such rights and protection with impunity. The Constitution of Rwanda explicitly enshrines the state's responsibility to protect families, to create the necessary conditions for them to flourish. This commitment is institutionalized through the Ministry of Gender and Family, which houses the Directorate General of Family Protection and Child Protection. This directorate is tasked with devising comprehensive policies aimed at eradicating gender-based violence and safeguarding women and children from domestic abuse and other forms of violence. Some of the policies developed by this directorate have been instrumental in developing Rwanda's reputation as a champion of women and family. However, there is a stark disparity between this idealistic policy framework and the reality faced by the government critics like myself. My experience as a political dissident in Rwanda in the past 14 years paints a grim picture of the selective application of these rights. 30 years ago, when a genocide against Tutsis took place in Rwanda, I was a student in Netherlands. As I watched the report of political upheaval, suffering and death coming from my beloved homeland in horror, I decided to take action and found a political party named the United Democratic Force of Rwanda, FDU, in Kigali. After a long stretch of political activism in the diaspora, I returned to Rwanda in January 2010 to register my party and run for president against incumbent Paul Kagame. I said goodbye to my family and 3 children at the Amsterdam Schiphol airport for what I then believed to be a very short separation. Sadly, some 14 years later, we remain apart. My criticism of the Rwandan government's policy and my open political aspiration have led to systematic violation of my civil rights, including my right to a family life. In March 2010, 2 months after I arrived in Rwanda, I wanted to return to the Netherlands for my son's 18th birthday. I had promised to celebrate with him, and I was eager to keep my word, but police stopped me at the airport, telling me that I was not allowed to leave the country due to an impending summons from the Criminal Investigations Department, CID, which has since been replaced with the Rwandan Investigations Bureau. This was the first in a long series of targeted restrictions aiming at curtailing my freedom following my political dissident. The situation escalated when in April 2010, I formally requested permission from the Prosecutor General to travel to the Netherlands for my son's first communion. a significant family event. I provided the relevant authority with specific travel dates. The CID responded by summoning me for interview on those exact dates, effectively barring me from traveling and attending the ceremony. By the end of 2010, this political persecution intensified and I was arrested on trumped up charges including conspiring against the government by use of war and terrorism and genocide denial. I was subjected to these baseless accusations for daring to participate in Rwandan democracy as a presidential candidate and delivering a speech at the Kigali Genocide Memorial in Kizozi, urging unity and reconciliation. And so this is a correction. When I mentioned that this Genocide Memorial Center was actually in Kigali, it wasn't. So this now we know where it was. In 2012, following a political motivated trial, the Rwandan Supreme Court sentenced me to 15 years in prison, a decision that led to further violation of my human rights. I had to endure long periods of solitary confinement, which were not part of my sentence. I was also only allowed few restricted visits from my relatives, which limited my access to social support network, all practices that stands in stark contrast to Rwanda's supposed commitment to protecting family and advancing women's rights. In 2014, I took my case to the African Court on Human and People's Rights. After 3 years of deliberation, the court decided in my favor and acknowledged the infringement of my rights. The 2017 ruling by the African Court confirmed that the Rwandan government had breached its international obligation. The court further ruled that the Rwandan government should compensate my family and I for the moral prejudice we suffered during this ordeal. The Rwandan government has refused to acknowledge the African Court on Human and People's Rights ruling to this day. Following the African Court's ruling, despite being eligible for release, I was kept in prison under stringent conditions for an additional year. I was eventually released under conditions through a presidential pardon in 2018. My suffering and that of my family, however, did not come to an end with my release from prison. After being freed, I was subjected to a relentless smear campaign on social media. Many high-ranking Rwandan officials, including ministers, government spokespersons, presidential advisors, ambassadors, and members of parliament, publicly accused me of promoting a genocide ideology, inciting genocide, and waging war against Rwanda and its people. Although blatantly false, these allegations put a target on my back and made me fear for my safety, as well as the safety of those closest to me. These fears were not baseless, as during this period, many of my closest supporters who had backed my call to establish a genuine democracy and a rule of law in Rwanda were forcefully disappeared, killed, and arbitrarily arrested. Though I had no patrimonial relation with any of them, every single one of these people in my is family to me, and I remain heartbroken to have been separated from them. The children's wives, parents, and other family members of my supporters who have been killed, disappeared, or put in jail for daring to demand a more democratic Rwanda are also living in endless sorrow. They too have been arbitrarily detained. Their rights to a family life in the state which had promised to protect them. The presidential pardon I was granted in 2018 stipulated that I may leave. Let's go up there. That I may leave Rwanda with permission from the Ministry of Justice. However, my repeated requests to visit my family in the Netherlands have so far been met with nothing but silence. Over the years, I received a few acknowledgements of receipts for my request, but never an actual answer. I have missed numerous family milestones, including weddings of my children and the birth of my grandchildren. In 2023, I appealed directly to Rwanda's President Paul Kagame on humanitarian grounds and asked for permission to visit my severely ill husband, who I have not met for more than a decade. Again, my plea went unanswered. Since then, I once again attempt to restore my civil rights, including my right to freedom, through Rwanda's court, but my application was denied. Today, as nations around the world celebrate the Global Day of Parents, I remain separated from my children, my story, those of my supporters who have been targeted in various ways for calling for genuine democracy and rule of law in Rwanda, speaks to the harm parents and their children suffered when state mechanisms are wielded to silence, intimidate, and punish government critics of human rights activists. Today, I am not only being denied my right to a family life, but also remain barred from participating in my country's election. This means I am not allowed to participate in the July 2024 presidential elections and make my case for genuine democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Rwanda as a candidate. The state refused to rehabilitate my political rights, as well as its repeated violation of my basic human rights, including my right to a family life, breach Rwanda's commitment under the East African Community Treaty, which mandates adherence to the fundamental principles of democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. For this reason, I have filed a case before the East African Court of Justice. My aim was not only to secure interim measure allowing me to participate in incoming presidential election, but also to challenge my unjust and heartbreaking separation from my family. This legal action is not just about my right, it's about affirming the rights of all individuals who have been similarly victimized, and in the hope that I will be able to celebrate the next Global Day of Parents surrounded by my children. The views expressed in this article are the author's own and do not necessarily reflect Al Jazeera's editorial stance. So wonderful. This is a good article, and it gives, obviously, it tells the story from the victim tells the story themselves. And so if these allegations or statements within this articles are substantiated, then surely it will be good for all women, mothers, sisters, nieces to come together to raise funds, to engage human rights lawyers, to actually engage the Rwandan government, President Paul Kagame, to allow this lady to see her family. Now, this video is not a video that have any interest in the political activities or the rights and wrongs of the government of Rwanda. It is just a mere fact that if a person has been pardoned and all charges against her has been dropped, then surely that person should be given that right to travel to see their family. It is unhealthy for a woman to be away from her family since the year 2010, when there is no real accusation against her, and generally she has actually adhered to the laws and the rules of Rwanda. And so in this video we plead with the president of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame, who is basically an icon of African presidents, to actually look into this right of a minority or of a person to ensure that they have that right to travel and also the right to participate, hopefully in their own national government activities. And so thank you once again for watching this video. If you are not even able to support and you have a way to actually lobby the government of Rwanda to look into the case of Miss Umuhoza, then surely that will be great. Thank you for watching EEC Art Tours. The next video will look at President Kagame's victory in August 2024, ascending to the position of presidency in Rwanda for the 4th time. So thank you for watching EEC Art Tours. Add your comments and contributions. It is a learning platform. Thank you for watching.